Hello, I am Daisy, your hostess, and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are continuing on with the book titled Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox. The last couple videos have been really good, and if you wish to catch up and you're new, please visit my book playlist and you'll access them there. The last video was titled Your Heart's Desire and the Boogeyman Under the Stairs. Now, interesting for me, as far as when it comes to your heart's desire, I don't know about you, but finding that answer to that question has been a challenge for me. Sometimes I feel like I've been just kind of floating through life and seeing a flower and stopping by it and enjoying it, meaning the challenges that God has given me. It's not like I woke up one day and I said, well, hey, I want to be a deputy sheriff. I want to help people who are in foreclosure, thousands of people. I want to be the mayor of a city, which, of course, all those things I have been. But I remember being a little girl and my mom would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was a very hard question because, first of all, I didn't know, what do you mean grow up? And eventually you kind of figure it out. And I said, well, I want to be a painter. I think my mom thought I wanted to be a house painter. I wanted to be an artist. And I don't know if that was my heart's desire, but I just remember that that's what I said I wanted to do. And so I sit back sometimes here in my life now, wondering, what is my heart's desire? And are you also feeling like me? Like, what is it? What do I really want? And not knowing. But I think most of all, and I think it's based on this chapter that I'm coming up with this conclusion, that most of our lives, we are in training for that moment where we answer God's call. And I'm thinking about those instances in my life where I did answer the call, and not to be afraid that, will I have what I need to do this job or to fulfill this role that I need to fulfill in my life right now. And as the author said in that chapter, whatever you may require to answer that call, God will provide, whether it's money, opportunity, introduction to the people and resources you need, the knowledge and the training, and what else? Even the leisure. If it's time for you to sit back and enjoy life in a certain way, then all of that will come to you if that is the call that God wants you to do at that time. So don't be afraid, which then again, that jumps into the boogeyman under the stairs, which is sometimes we're so afraid about something in the future that has never happened. But as we allow life to happen and we embrace it with an altruistic attitude, and I love the idea to cultivate our virtues, not in the absence of life happening, you know what I mean? Like, not in the absence of the challenges, but despite of those challenges, to walk into that mess bringing the best of us. That's what I believe. So with that, I'm not going to expand any further. Let's move on to the next chapter. I welcome you. Sit back and relax. Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox. This book is in the public domain. This next section is titled No Results Without Prayer. There is only one method of spiritual progress, and that is by the practice of the presence of God. Whether we call this scientific prayer or spiritual treatment, there is no other way. Mankind is continually seeking to discover a shortcut of some kind or other, because the carnal mind is constitutionally lazy. But, as usual, the lazy man takes the most pains in the long run, and having wasted his time in wandering up bypaths, he is ultimately driven by failure and suffering to the realization of the grand truth that there is no substitute for prayer. This does not mean that any particular form of prayer is essential, but prayer there must be. That is, the conscious dwelling upon the being of God. I have heard people say, I did not treat when such a problem arose. I just knew the truth about it and the trouble disappeared. But this, of course, is exactly what scientific prayer or treatment is, and in its most beautiful and effective form. Such a person really means that he has not used some rigid or crystallized form of expression, which, needless to say, is not in the least essential. Formal or set treatments are useful things to have by one to fall back upon when spontaneity fails. Then they help to focus the thought and usually set the natural well a-bubbling. But the thought's the thing, and the simpler and more spontaneous it is, and the more quickly it comes, the better. If your intuitive nature is well developed, you will seldom need to use formal statements at all. This is excellent, for who will trouble to climb a ladder when he is strong enough to leap over the wall? Unfortunately, however, there are a great many people with little or no intuitional development as yet, and many other people lose the ability to receive intuitional messages when worried or frightened. Then the latter will probably be their salvation. It must not be overlooked that very many people actually do all their work with formal statements of truth and get consistently good results by working in this way. Not through repeating affirmations like a parrot, it is needless to say. Those who work like a parrot inevitably make the parrot's demonstration. They remain in the cage. Of a good worker who used the same phrases many times, it was said by a friend, he constantly uses the old affirmations, but he stuffs them with fresh feeling every time. For one who has neither very much intuitional power at his command, nor yet the ability easily to express his thoughts in words, this is a model procedure. Meanwhile, in such a case, the student must be particularly careful not to accept his want of intuitional power as a fixed thing, but to recognize it merely as a temporary disability to be gradually overcome. In fact, such a person should make a special point of treating himself for intuitional power regularly every day by claiming it. Of course, I have conscious divine intelligence. I individualize omniscience. I have direct knowledge of truth. I have perfect intuition. I have spiritual perception. I know. Thus we see that practically all students of truth do in fact employ treatment in one form or another, even though they may disclaim it. There are, however, a few people who actually refrain from all treatment on principle, but since one has never heard of their healing anyone, and they seem to be continually in personal difficulties of all sorts, the facts speak for themselves and only go to prove the rule that treatment or the practice of the presence of God is the only road to harmony. End of section. Stay here. In this video, I'll move on to the next section titled Faith. Quote, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report." End quote. Book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 1 through 2. There is a good deal of misconception among students of truth upon the subject of faith. Some of those who are on the spiritual basis confuse the idea of faith with the conventional type of faith healing which always fades into disrepute sooner or later because it cannot be relied upon to give steady results. Nevertheless, faith properly understood is a necessary part of every demonstration. The confusion arises because blind faith is not really faith at all, but quite a different thing, namely hope. Now, hope is not of the slightest use in demonstrations. Frail, anemic, unfruitful in results, she it is who maketh the heart sick. It is her elder sister, faith, who is the substance, the evidence, the sure and certain forerunner of victory. This is so because faith properly understood is the result of the understanding of principle. When we have an adequate understanding of the true nature of being, we have faith that the law, properly applied, cannot and will not fail us. And so when a practical problem presents itself, a call for healing or supply, perhaps, a sound comprehension of this law produces the scientific conviction, and then the demonstration necessarily follows. Thus it is the elders, those in the possession of spiritual understanding, who receive the true report or demonstration. The New Testament, among many other things, is a healer's casebook, and in most of the instances cited, faith was regarded as being a necessary preliminary. Stretch forth thy hand. The essential doctrine on the subject is presented in the dramatic episode of the withering of the fig tree. The master was desirous of proving to his students the power of understanding thought. For this reason, he destroyed the fig tree. He naturally would not select an animal for this purpose, and a mineral would have been useless. A plant was the proper thing to experiment upon. The following day, the disciples were amazed to discover that the tree against which the word had been spoken was destroyed. Upon calling his attention to this, he said, in effect, "Yes, and that shows you the power of trained thought. You are surprised at this, but I tell you that you could order that mountain itself to be thrown into the sea, and it would happen, if you really believed it and did not doubt in your hearts." Then he added significantly, "Before you practice the power of the word, if you are not at peace with everybody, treat yourself until you are." From the book of Matthew, chapter 21, verse 19, and the book of Mark, chapter 11, verse 12 through 14, and also verse 20 through 26. This episode is so dramatic and so outstanding once we understand the nature of thought that we are astonished that the world could have missed it so long. The closing incident is particularly notable. He warned them of hostile or critical thoughts because of the harm they would do to themselves. Many people are greatly afraid of other people's thoughts, but there is no need for any such fear. Nothing can come into your experience unless it first enters your mentality, and nothing can enter your mentality unless it there finds something like itself to which it can attach itself. As long as your heart is really clear of ill will, you are perfectly safe. On the other hand, the use of the power of thought in hostility to others could only result in very severe suffering and punishment for yourself. According to your belief, is it done unto you? To think of evil of Tom, Dick, or Harry is to think evil, and to think evil ipso facto is to call it down upon yourself. There are many who appreciate the power of faith, but lament that they do not possess it, and fear that, because of this, they can make no progress in truth. There is no need for such apprehension. The will to faith in itself constitutes faith for the purpose of a metaphysical act or treatment, and is sufficient. Dissociate yourself from your own doubts. Remove your consent, and they lose all power. You are not your mind. You are not your thoughts. You are not your doubts. Say, "Yes, my mind is full of doubts, but I am not. I am not consenting to it. I have spoken the word, and it shall not return void." This is the substance of things you hope for. It is the evidence of the thing not seen. No power can hinder it. End of section. Stay right here in this video as we'll go on to the next section. Before I turn the page, please do hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. All right, the next section is titled The 7-Day Mental Diet. The subject of diet is one of the foremost topics of the present day in public interest. Newspapers and magazines teem with articles on the subject. The counters of the bookshops are filled with volumes unfolding the mysteries of protein, starches, vitamins, and so forth. Just now, the whole world is food conscious. Experts on the subject are saying that physically you become the thing that you eat, that your whole body is really composed of the food that you have eaten in the past. What you eat today, they say, will be in your bloodstream after the lapse of so many hours, and it is in your bloodstream that builds all the tissues composing your body. And there you are. Of course, no sensible person has any quarrel with all this. It is perfectly true as far as it goes, and the only surprising thing is it has taken the world so long to find it out. But in this pamphlet, I am going to deal with the subject of dieting at a level that is infinitely more profound and far-reaching in its effects. I refer, of course, to mental dieting. The most important of all factors in your life is the mental diet on which you live. It is the food which you furnish to your mind that determines the whole character of your life. It is the thoughts you allow yourself to think, the subjects that you allow your mind to dwell upon, which make you and your surroundings what they are. As thy days, so shall thy strength be, which in modern language may be translated as thy thoughts, so shall thy life be. Everything in your life today, the state of your body, whether healthy or sick, the state of your fortune, whether prosperous or impoverished, the state of your home, whether happy or the reverse, the present condition of every phase of your life, in fact, is entirely conditioned by the thoughts and feelings which you have entertained in the past, by the habitual tone of your past thinking. And the condition of your life tomorrow and next week and next year will be entirely conditioned by the thoughts and feelings which you choose to entertain from now onward. In other words, you choose your life. That is to say, you choose all the condition of your life when you choose the thoughts upon which you allow your mind to dwell. Thought is the real causative force in life, and there is no other. You cannot have one kind of mind and another kind of environment. This means that you cannot change your environment while leaving your mind unchanged, nor, and this is the supreme key to life and the reason for this pamphlet, can you change your mind without your environment changing too. This then is the real key to life. If you change your mind, your conditions must change too. Your body must change, your daily work or other activities must change, your home must change, the color tone of your whole life must change. For whether you be habitually happy and cheerful or low-spirited and fearful depends entirely on the quality of the mental food upon which you diet yourself. Please be very clear about this. If you change your mind, your conditions must change too. We are transformed by the renewing of our minds. So now you will see that your mental diet is really the most important thing in your whole life. This may be called a great cosmic law, and its truth is seen to be perfectly obvious when once it is clearly stated in this way. In fact, I do not know of any thoughtful person who denies its essential truth. The practical difficulty in applying it, however, arises from the fact that our thoughts are so close to us that it is difficult, without a little practice, to stand back, as it were, and look at them objectively. Yet that is just what you must learn to do. You must train yourself to choose the subject of your thinking at any given time, and also to choose the emotional tone, or what we call the mood, that colors it. Yes, you can choose your moods. Indeed, if you could not, you would have no real control over your life at all. Moods habitually entertained produce the characteristic disposition of the person concerned, and it is his disposition that finally makes or mars a person's happiness. You cannot be healthy, you cannot be happy, you cannot be prosperous if you have a bad disposition. If you are sulky or surly or cynical or depressed or superior or frightened half out of your wits, your life cannot possibly be worth living. Unless you are determined to cultivate a good disposition, you may as well give up all hope of getting anything worthwhile out of life, and it is kinder to tell you very plainly that this is the case. If you are not determined to start in now and carefully select all day the kind of thoughts that you are going to think, you may as well give up all hope of shaping your life into the kind of thing that you want it to be, because this is the only way. In short, if you want to make your life happy and worthwhile, which is what God wishes you to make it, you must begin immediately to train yourself in the habit of thought selection and thought control. This will be exceedingly difficult for the first few days, but if you persevere, you will find that it will become rapidly easier, and it is actually the most interesting experiment that you could possibly make. In fact, this thought control is the most thrillingly interesting hobby that anyone could take up. You will be amazed at the interesting things that you will learn about yourself, and you will get results almost from the beginning. Now, many people, knowing this truth, make sporadic efforts from time to time to control their thoughts, but the thought stream being so close, as I have pointed out, and the impact from outside so constant and varied, they do not make very much progress. That is not the way to work. Your only chance is definitely to form a new habit of thought, which will carry you through when you are preoccupied or off your guard, as well as when you are consciously attending to the business. This new thought habit must be definitely acquired, and the foundation of it can be laid within a few days, and the way to do it is this. Make up your mind to devote 1 week solely to the task of building a new habit of thought. And during that week, let everything else in life be unimportant as compared with that. If you will do so, then that week will be the most significant week in your whole life. It will literally be the turning point for you. If you will do so, it is safe to say that your whole life will change for the better. In fact, nothing can possibly remain the same. This does not simply mean that you will be able to face your present difficulties in better spirit. It means that the difficulties will go. This is the scientific way to alter your life, and being in accordance with the great law, it cannot fail. Now, do you realize that by working in this way, you do not have to change conditions? What happens is that you apply the law, and then the conditions change spontaneously. You cannot change conditions directly. You have often tried to do so and failed. But go on the 7-day mental diet, and conditions must change for you. This then is your prescription. For 7 days, you must not allow yourself to dwell for a single moment on any kind of negative thought. You must watch yourself for a whole week as a cat watches a mouse. And you must not, under any pretense, allow your mind to dwell on any thought that is not positive, constructive, optimistic, kind. This discipline will be so strenuous that you could not maintain it consciously for much more than a week. But I do not ask you to do so. A week will be enough, because by that time, the habit of positive thinking will begin to be established. Some extraordinary changes for the better will have come into your life, encouraging you enormously, and then the future will take care of itself. The new way of life will be so attractive and so much easier than the old way that you will find your mentality aligning itself almost automatically. But the 7 days are going to be strenuous. I would not have you enter upon this without counting the cost. Mere physical fasting would be child's play in comparison, even if you have a very good appetite. The most exhausting form of army gymnastics, combined with 30-mile route marches, would be mild in comparison with this undertaking. But it is only for 1 week in your life, and it will definitely alter everything for the better. For the rest of your life here, for all eternity, in fact, things will be utterly different and inconceivably better than if you had not carried through this undertaking. Do not start it lightly. Think about it for a day or two before you begin. Then start in, and the grace of God go with you. You may start it any day in the week and at any time in the day, first thing in the morning or after breakfast or after lunch. It does not matter. But once you do start, you must go right through for the 7 days. That is essential. The whole idea is to have 7 days of unbroken mental discipline in order to get the mind definitely bent in a new direction once and for all. If you make a false start, or even if you go on well for 2 or 3 days and then for any reason fall off the diet, the thing to do is to drop the scheme altogether for several days and then to start again afresh. There must be no jumping on and off, as it were. You remember that Rip Van Winkle in the play would take a solemn vow of teetotalism and then promptly accept a drink from the first neighbor who offered him one, saying calmly, "I won't count this one." Well, on the 7-day mental diet, this sort of thing simply will not do. You must positively count every lapse, and whether you do or not, nature will. Where there is a lapse, you must go off the diet altogether and then start again. Now, in order, if possible, to forestall difficulties, I will consider them in a little detail. First of all, what do I mean by negative thinking? Well, a negative thought is any thought of failure, disappointment, or trouble. Any thought of criticism or spite or jealousy or condemnation of others or self-condemnation. Any thought of sickness or accident, or in short, any kind of limitation or pessimistic thinking. Any thought that is not positive and constructive in character, whether it concerns you, yourself, or anyone else, is a negative thought. Do not bother too much about the question of classification, however. In practice, you will never have any trouble in knowing whether a given thought is positive or negative. Even if your brain tries to deceive you, your heart will whisper the truth. Second, you must be quite clear that what this scheme calls for is that you shall not entertain or dwell upon negative things. Note this carefully. It is not the thoughts that come to you that matter, but only such of them as you choose to entertain and dwell upon. It does not matter what thoughts may come to you, provided you do not entertain them. It is the entertaining or dwelling upon them that matters. Of course, many negative thoughts will come to you all day long. Some of them will just drift into your mind of their own accord, seemingly, and these come to you out of the race mind. Other negative thoughts will be given to you by other people, either in conversation or by their conduct. Or you will hear disagreeable news perhaps by letter or telephone, or you will see crimes and disasters announced in the newspaper headings. These things, however, do not matter as long as you do not entertain them. In fact, it is these very things that provide the discipline that is going to transform you during this epoch-making week. The thing to do is, directly the negative thought presents itself, turn it out. Turn away from the newspaper. Turn out the thought of the unkind letter or stupid remark or whatnot. When the negative thought floats into your mind, immediately turn it out and think something else. Best of all, think of God as explained in the Golden Key. A perfect analogy is furnished by the case of a man who is sitting by an open fire when a red-hot cinder flies out and falls on his sleeve. If he knocks that cinder off at once, without a moment's delay to think about it, no harm is done. But if he allows it to rest on him for a single moment under any pretense, the mischief is done. And it will be a troublesome task to repair that sleeve. So it is with a negative thought. Now, what of those negative thoughts and conditions which it is impossible to avoid at the point where you are today? What of the ordinary troubles that you will have to meet in the office or at home? The answer is that such things will not affect your diet provided you do not accept them by fearing them, by believing them, by being indignant or sad about them, or by giving them any power at all. Any negative condition that duty compels you to handle will not affect your diet. Go to the office or meet the cares at home without allowing them to affect you. None of these things move me. And all will be well. Suppose that you are lunching with a friend who talks negatively. Do not try to shut him up or otherwise snub him. Let him talk. But do not accept what he says, and your diet will not be affected. Suppose that on coming home you are greeted with a lot of negative conversation. Do not preach a sermon, but simply do not accept it. It is your mental consent, remember, that constitutes your diet. Suppose you witness an accident or an act of injustice, let us say. Instead of reacting by accepting the appearance and responding with pity or indignation, refuse to accept the appearance at its face value. Do anything that you can to right matters. Give it the right thought and let it go at that. You will still be on the diet. Of course, it will be very helpful if you can take steps to avoid meeting during this week anyone who seems particularly likely to arouse the devil in you. People who get on your nerves or rub you up the wrong way or bore you are better avoided while you are on the diet. But if it is not possible to avoid them, then you must take a little extra discipline, that is all. Suppose that you have a particularly trying ordeal before you next week. Well, if you have enough spiritual understanding, you will know how to meet that in the spiritual way. But for our present purpose, I think I would wait and start the diet as soon as the ordeal is over. As I said before, do not take up that diet lightly, but think it over well first. In closing, I want to tell you that people often find that the starting of this diet seems to stir up all sorts of difficulties. It seems as though everything begins to go wrong at once. This may be disconcerting, but it is really a good sign. It means that things are moving, and is not that the very object we have in view? Suppose your whole world seems to rock out its foundations. Hold on steadily, let it rock, and when the rocking is over, the picture will have reassembled itself into something much nearer to your heart's desire. The above point is vitally important and rather subtle. Do you not see that the very dwelling upon these difficulties is in itself a negative thought which has probably thrown you off the diet? The remedy is not, of course, to deny that your world is rocking in appearance, but to refuse to take the appearance for the reality. Judge not according to appearances, but judge righteous judgment. Keep your thought positive, optimistic, and kindly while the outer picture is rocking. Keep it so in spite of any appearances, and a glorious victory is certain. Every side of your life will radically alter for the better. A closing word of caution. Do not tell anyone else that you are on the diet or that you intend to go on it. Keep this tremendous project strictly to yourself. Remember that your soul should be the secret place of the Most High. When you have come through the 7 days successfully and secured your demonstration, allow a reasonable time to elapse to establish a new mentality, and then tell the story to anyone else whom you think is likely to be helped by it. And finally, remember that nothing said or done by anyone else can possibly throw you off the diet. Only your own reaction to the other person's conduct can do that. End of section. All right, before you head out, please do hit that like button. And if you like what you hear or what you see on this channel, please do subscribe and share it with your friends. Let's head over on to the next video where we continue with this book titled Power Through Constructive Thinking by Emmet Fox.